Welcome to Comic and Screen. My name is Sam Otten, and with me, as usual, is Jason Book. And in this video, we're going to share our reactions to the Wonder Woman trailer that was released at Comic-Con. Made a pretty big splash there. It's still making the rounds and getting a lot of talk on social media, so we wanted to share our thoughts on it. So, Jason, I'll let you start. What was your initial reaction overall to this Wonder Woman trailer?
I thought it was pretty cool. It had an interesting tone. I find the more I see of it, the more I'm, getting more used to seeing Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I still want to see a nice extended scene with her besides just an action scene or small bits of dialogue. I kind of want to see her inhabit the costume and kind of, feel like she is really kind of a big, strong, Amazonian warrior like she's supposed to be. But I really enjoyed what I've seen so far. I liked the difference, as we've talked before, about the time it's set in. So we're going to have those World War I elements to it. We're going to have some nice scenes on Themyscira and things like that. And the action looks really cool, too. So it's kind of making its own splash. I can see why it's been received really well so far, because there hasn't been a real strong, new woman superhero character in the movies for a while. And the music was different and cool. The action was good. And I like to see what they do with the Steve Trevor stuff as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, my initial reaction was just very positive. It gave a lot of stuff to sink into. And like you said, it has a kind of a visual style and it has the tone that it's establishing. And I thought this trailer did a nice job of setting the time, place, and the kind of color palette and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was nice seeing some quick glimpses of Themyscira and the Amazonians, which looked cool, looked like really nice production design.
Mm-hmm.
But then contrasting that with the drab and the dark kind of gray and green colors of the World War One
Mm-hmm.
setting that we're more familiar with. It's a very realistic setting.
Yeah.
And they just seem to have it really locked in terms of a visual tone, which to me is always a good signal. It's like, wow, okay, from top to bottom, production design to costume design to then the story folding into that setting. To me, that's where you have things lined up to be a really great movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, the setting should matter. The story should actually play off the setting, and then the visual style should, play off the setting. And to me, I was already seeing strong glimpses of that in the trailer.
Yeah, and another cool thing visually I thought too was her costume seemed to be a little more brighter in color than it was in Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, I noticed a little bit more color.
And that's something they need, because you don't want it to always be gray and black and drab, and we've seen that. And I think Wonder Woman, could have a little bit of optimism to her, kind of like Superman can in his movies. And it's nice to see the colors pop in the trailer.
Yeah, and there are certain moments where I think that little bit more color makes a huge difference visually.
Totally.
Like when she's coming out of the trench and she's like slowly kind of stepping up, and then when she's in there amongst the World War I soldiers, the fact that there's a little bit more red or a little bit more blue just makes it work all that much better.
Totally. And I mean, there's also, she's not American or anything, but there's that aspect too, because it's a contrast of, those colors that are associated with America during the war as well. So visually, that's a cool aspect to have in the film as well.
Yeah, and I was just surprised how many unique little visual moments they fit in this trailer. And, they haven't given away a lot yet, except for like setting. And kind of the premise, but not really giving away the story or any of the plot beats or anything yet. But they gave us these memorable visual moments, like her coming out of the trench was a great one.
Yeah.
There was this shot of a female character with like half of her face reconstructed in kind of an early.
Weird.
So, but like visually, it's like, wow, that really like, at least for me, really drew me in. Like, whoa, that's a visual that I'm going to remember and look for in the movie.
Same, yeah.
The female Amazonian archer that's like leaping through the air and drawing her bow as she comes out in front of her target, that just is visually stunning as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, moments like that, and the one you mentioned with the face, it was cool because it was unexpected, and it's kind of giving me another layer. We didn't really see too much of a big bad yet, though, did we?
No. I think that they might save that for a villain trailer later or something like that.
Yeah, so that should be interesting.
Yeah, but for me, what this one does is we haven't seen the villain yet, or we don't really know what the plot's actually going to be, except for that it's going to be related to World War I somehow.
Yeah.
But we did see that they have a style, not only for their production design, but for their action. So like that archer flying over, but also there were a couple times where Wonder Woman is like kind of sliding and has her fight choreography, some slow motion. But what I like about it is that it seems to have a lot of energy but it's very clear and like you can really see what's happening. And I like that kind of action more than like the shaky cam, really up close, where it's just kind of frantic stuff. You can't really tell what's going on,
Right.
but you know, like, oh, something action packed was happening, but you almost feel it more than see it. I like to actually see it like a work of art.
Yeah, I think it'll work well for this movie as long as they don't overdo the slow motion shots because I don't want it'd be really easy for them to 300 it, especially with the
Hmm.
Amazonian scenes. So,
Hmm.
and 300 for its time did a really good job of those kind of fight scenes. So, as you say, this is something different, and I hope they can keep that going for the film and have its own style and its own visual style that really makes it stand out and be its own thing.
Hmm. Absolutely. You mentioned the color of her costume. There were also some other nice moments of color, like the water right at the first shot.
Hmm.
And then, so having that color really contrasts well with the darkness of World War One, and I think that's going to thematically fit into her dealing with the world of man and like man at its lowest point, where that darkness and drabness I think is going to reinforce the themes.
Totally agree with you. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we've seen World War II a lot, and we've seen Vietnam in movies and things like that. It's kind of an unexplored time in these kind of movies, anyways. So there's a lot of potential there, and I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they do at the end of the movie because I don't think she's gonna have a Captain America happen and she gets frozen or
Hmm.
displaced. She'll probably just kind of disappear for a while and pop back up when she's needed, and kind of adds to the myth of the character as well.
Yeah, and because we know that she goes into hiding or she kind of withdraws for 100 years until Batman v Superman, it seems like maybe this movie can't have a totally happy ending. Maybe she has a sort of private victory, but I don't think it can be a huge triumphant victory, everybody happy at the end, because if it was, then why would she withdraw? So I think that's going to be something to look forward to. Like, what kind of ending is this movie going to have? It might not have a typical kind of blockbuster ending.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how they set that up for a potential trilogy or what they're going to do with it here. So it's got potential to have kind of a different, kind of beginning, middle, and end, and I like that.
The other thing that I thought was really smart in terms of the setup for the movie and the writing was how they gave the audience a perspective character, or they gave us kind of a lens to see these different worlds. So for Themyscira and the Amazonian culture, we can have Steve Trevor be this kind of outsider who's visiting it, and then he can ask the questions, and he can be our eyes as we see that civilization and see how they have kind of maybe something like a paradise or maybe a egalitarian high functioning society. And then when we come into man's world and World War One and that stuff, we can see it through the eyes of Diana. Like, she's a stranger to this man's world, but that might help us to see that time, that setting, and its problems and its flaws through her perspective. But in both cases, it's nice to have that character who can be our eyes and ears for the audience.
Yeah, I was rewatching the animated movie they did a few years ago recently, and it really brought me into that thinking how they're gonna handle the Steve Trevor thing because Nathan Fillion did a really good job with that, kind of what he would be like if he was on this island of all these women and stuff. So they've gotta have some fun with that, but also show Steve Trevor as being like, he's a guy who can handle himself and stuff and not be a total pushover on this island full of these warriors too. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that aspect of it for sure.